Just let me know. Okay, thank you, Stacy. I can't say enough about Workspace and the opportunities that you afford small businesses, as well the opportunity for me to sit there and really help small businesses. Again, my name is Shelley Kohler, and I know some of you on the line. I am very fortunate to be able to, one, be an essential employee, but my purpose and love for life is helping small businesses. I'm a previous small business owner myself. I've been an entrepreneur since I was young. But I will say that given these times, I think we're all kind of really in a new era. It's an era of uncertainty, unprecedented time and change that we don't even part of. I think I'm muted there. Okay. Part of what I want to provide today is to get everybody thinking, start thinking about what needs to happen next. You know, the fast and furious piece about financials, the PPP and the EIDL, that's kind of wavering down. And I think the next real thing that we need to think about is, how do you position yourself? What do you need to look at? We need to identify. How do you plan for that? How do you implement that? And then that is the next step into reopening. So I'm gonna, kind of jump in, but what I would like to, I saw a bunch of names, but what I would like you to do is, if everybody would just kind of unmute and tell me your industry. Are you a service, manufacturing? Are you restaurant? So that I can kind of bring some pinpoints. So if just everybody would just let me know their industry, I'm going to write them down.
I'll go. I'm Donna DiBaldo from Bellers Music and DiBaldo Music. We have instrument sales, rentals, repairs, so retail and service, and also private instruction, so the educational aspect.
Okay.
I'll just call people out in the order that I see them. Marcus Fink, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm from Cass Children's Theater. We're a nonprofit in Manchester.
Hi, Marcus.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Megan, you're next on my list.
I am with the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. I just started, so I'm a new employee there.
Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
I have someone here called iPhone. Gentleman in a white shirt. Hello.
Hi, Dan from ProSource Builders Construction.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Service.
Beverly Johnson, you want to say hello?
Yes, this is Beverly Johnson. I'm a hairdresser. I'm a self-employed in a senior living community in Manchester.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Larry?
Yeah, how you doing? It's Larry from Extreme Temp Heating and Cooling. We're out of Wallingford.
Okay, I have salon, I have service, retail, nonprofit, and instruction.
What about Kimberly?
Hi, Kimberly with Verve Design. I'm an interior design. Oh, sorry, there are two Kimberlys.
You go ahead. We'll get the next one.
Interior design service out of Glastonbury, Connecticut.
Great. Kimberly number 2.
Hi, Kimberly Whitaker. I'm from Connecticut Main Street Center, statewide nonprofit working with downtowns and main streets across the state of Connecticut.
We love you guys. Thanks for what you do. Did we get to Julie?
No, I'm here. Hi, I'm Julie. I own and manage a group mental health practice. We have 2 locations in East Berlin and in Middletown.
Okay.
Griselda?
They're all chiming in.
Hi, I'm Griselda. I cover the Bridgeport area. I am Michelle's colleague.
Excellent. Great.
Hi, Griselda. Thanks for chiming in.
And is Lisa? We got Lisa.
Hi, yes, and I'm also new to the Connecticut Small Business Development Center.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Joseph, glad you made it in. I saw you trying to join and it just wasn't.
Yeah, I was having a hard time.
All
Joe Lipper, Frame Dimensions. We're in Manchester and in West Hartford Center. We're in the picture framing business. We do digital printing, art and frame restoration, in-house installation. So we do, you could call us a retail and service.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Okay.
And then don't forget about Workspace.
Absolutely. You're always on my radar.
Excellent. All right, is there anybody we missed who wants to introduce themselves and their business? All right.
Okay, so first off, thank you everybody for taking your time. We'll get started with, it's a PowerPoint. There's 10 slides, but there's a lot of content that I'm going to be talking about. So if you have a notepad and a paper, write down notes, write down your questions. We are going to, get through as much as we can, and I'll leave about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A. But then we will hit this as well next week, and this is recorded, so you can go back. So as we all know,
if you want to go ahead and mute yourself now, so we don't get this feedback, and then when you have a question, feel free to unmute.
Thank you. So as we all know, disaster preparedness has been on the radar for many, many years. We're looking at all kinds of different disasters. The one we're currently in is kind of where I want you to kind of keep your thoughts, and obviously that's where they are. But in doing so, I'm going to be sprinkling some future as well, because this is about currently what we need to do, but it's also setting up yourself for future so that you have something to refer to if, and we know that sometimes it's more of a when this might happen again. Praying never on this level, but we never know, tornadoes, fires, and whatever else. So starting with that, keep in mind your particular focus, what you do, and as we walk through the different areas, just identify and write them down. Because through here, I'll have some worksheets that I will be emailing to you that you can fill in and finish, and you will see what I'm talking about. So we want to minimize impact from any disruption, so that you can modify your operations to continue. Now we understand that we've been told not to, but moving forward, there are going to be certain things that we are going to need to do and able to open. So if you can go to slide 2. So over the next, today we're going to identify and assess, and you'll have some worksheets for that. Over the next 3 weeks, once you have identified, we can start to plan. And once we create that plan, we can look at how to implement, because every industry is going to be a little different. And then implementation, and here it says recover, it's more towards reopen for us. And in future, you can adjust that to be a recovery, but really our recovery now is reopen. How do we do that? So backing into some of these series and processes is what we're going to do. And then the last, finding those resources, who can help you, and industry specific. We as an organization are looking to collaborate. I know towns are looking to collaborate. So be on the lookout for other resources that have created task force, created committees to help either towns or industries reopen. Okay, next slide. Okay, so as we look at what is resiliency, what does it mean to you? So resiliency, as we know, is kind of a bouncing back, right? An elasticity. Something happens and we need to change. We need to understand what happened in order to move forward. You know, as it's saying here, you know, it's really about understanding where you are with what has happened, and now looking forward, how can you move? What do you need to move? What are those levers that you need to identify, the critical points and any current threats or potential threats? And that's kind of what we're going to be walking through. Now, given this screen, this was developed for our disaster preparedness. And, you know, we are really a country that we're more of a reactive than a prepared mode. Because I can look at all these different threats, a tornado, those are site specific and area specific that we've managed to recover from. Lightning, fire, snowstorms, you know, floods, even technology. But on the global level and on a very large scale, you can say nobody has in over 100 years, right? Nobody's around and knows really how to deal with or be prepared for something like this. So given that, it's really just about understanding. And if you understand and really know and focus what you need to pivot and move, you can do that on a dime. And I will give some examples as we move forward. You will learn to anticipate what types of impacts. We are going to focus on some actions that are important for you to minimize any type of disruption, as well as currently, you know, assess the safety, potential safety features that you're going to need to be aware of and maneuver around as we reopen and moving into the recovery plan. Some other key points, perfect. So here we're going to look at how we even start identifying. And the reason I asked you for your industries, because it will be different for every industry. So you need to look at some hazards that have affected your business. Again, this is from a plan, like a pre-COVID view. We had this created for when this would happen. So looking at what has affected your business and your employees, you know, for a lot of the industries that I see here that are really non-essential, we know what that is. So now what is it that, now we need to kind of identify the importance. So if you look at this chart, which is, you will get this, it's a fillable PDF. We have filled in some, but you can absolutely fill in some of your own that will be specific to your business. How you want to rate these is, you know, meteor strike to a building. The probability is 1. It is possible. It's very minimal, but what would the impact of that be to your business? 5. And we can actually kind of look at this pandemic as the probability of, it was a 1, and now I would probably move that to a 2 because it has happened and the potential for resurgence is there. So when you're looking at these different hazards, just look at the probability of it happening for you. You know, power outages, grids, pest infestation, quarantine, crime scenes. Those are all, you know, kind of specific to certain industries, or if you're a building owner, those kinds of pieces. And how we look at the impact is really, has this happened before? How often? And it might take a little bit of research, because you might not even know that this has happened before. Maybe it happened 20 years ago, maybe it happened 5 years ago, but not to you specifically, maybe in a different climate or a different part of the world. So this really gives you an idea for all industries that we are all interconnected. It's just a matter of the impact that it has on different industries. And this is where you're going to identify most of that. And it's a longer sheet, and it has other risks involved, but you can as well add your own risks specific to yours. And again, keep in mind, thinking of current. So we're looking at probability of this happening, right? But you can put in there what has happened, and the probability now would be 2, and the impact it has had on you. You know, for non-essential or for essential, okay, the impact on employees was probably more like a 3. You know, for non-essential, it was a 5. Like it's detrimental. So just keep in mind how that has affected you. I'm just making sure I cover everything in my notes. And, you know, I am an expert in many areas. You know, I have learned a lot over these past 5 weeks, and we are all in a learning curve. So I want to make sure, and I am got my notes in front of me, and I do want to make sure that I cover everything and answer all of your questions. So if you feel like I'm skipping over something, or if you have a question, please feel free to unmute and ask. Okay. So what this is going to lead to, once you identify and really kind of can see what has happened, the next part is we're going to look at, okay, the next slide, or what are the greatest risks? What is the scale of this for me? And in thinking about the scale, here is how you look at the 1 through 5. Is it insignificant to you? Remember, to you, minor, moderate, major, at critical. And then it gives the definitions here under employee safety, business interruption, reputation and image, and business objectives. So these were the 4 main areas. And there's a lot that can be grouped in business interruption, right? A lot is going to fall under employee safety. Reputation and image. This is a place where once you get this assessment done, this is where a lot of businesses are going to look to pivot, because regulations, certain aspects of how we used to do business are going to change. And we need to rethink and reevaluate how we hit our current target market or our historic target market, or do we now have a new target? And it also could lead into, what are my business objectives now? And having said that, I'll throw out a couple of scenarios. Business objectives. You had one, Beller's Music. You know, you have lessons, you sell instruments, you have retail, and you know, all of that. How is that still the objective? Can it be? And you won't know until certain regulations come down. How can we move forward with lessons? Online, retail, how do we do online? So that may have kind of shifted some of your objective of how you do business. And that's a slight pivot. I have businesses, and I'm gonna give you an example. It's a really big business, Yeti out of Colorado. They literally they made bikes, they made mugs, they had all of the cool, right, the outdoorsy stuff. When this hit, bikes were done. Nobody was buying retail, not enough for them to make a production. Within, I think it was a 3-day period, they, what we call pivoted, and they set up shop. They spent $30,000 in getting machinery and had the supplier contacts, and they now started making the face shields for PPE. And they are continuing to do that. But that is an example of a company who knew what they couldn't do, stepped in because they had information, they had things at their fingertips that they knew how to maneuver and help in critical time. Now, they were a non-essential that became an essential. So these are kind of, that's a major piece, right? But these are little things that we need to think about within our business that could change from, it could even change from a non-essential to an essential in how you kind of move forward. So this is one to kind of refer back to for the first fillable. On to the next slide, please. So I got into a little bit of this. What is it to pivot? Pivot, shift, strategy, basketball. You know, you land your foot, a pivot foot, and you can maneuver all around that. But if something changes, you now have to reassess, is that pivot foot in the right spot? I need to maybe move a lever. This is going to come into play for a lot of us, a new industry pattern, which has brought about new products. It has brought about the way, the environment, the way that consumers think. I mean, just take the toilet paper industry for one. You know, who would have thought that everybody needs to have 50 rolls of toilet paper? But, you know, people are thinking differently now. So when you're thinking of the different identifying and some critical areas, which is the next slide, not yet, Stacy, you want to start thinking about these things. And some of them you're not going to know until things start to open. But my intent here is to get you to think about those things. You might be, if it goes this way, if they do this, then I need to do this. If in fact they're going to slap a new regulation on us, then this is how we're going to have to move forward. So I just want you to start thinking about those things. And then again, the impacts to the current business. What are those impacts? And you're identifying some of them in the first slide. Disaster, it's just any disaster. But this is a global, it's so much harder to identify how things are going to be once we are able to reopen. So we have to stay resilient, we have to stay flexible, and we absolutely have to not be attached to some certain things. If something needs to pivot inside your business and you don't like how it's pivoting, then it's a different conversation. So keep those things in mind. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're getting into now how your business has functioned in the past and things that it cannot function without. And we're going to take some deep dives into those functions. I should stop here and ask if anybody has any questions yet. Okay, so, you know, typical functions, critical business functions. You need machinery to create a particular product. What goes into those products? Raw materials, employees, electricity. So this is one example. Getting into the service industry. I got several service industry here. You know, you're supporting resources, your suppliers. You know, what can you get? What can't you get? Your employees. You know, obviously safety is going to be another one. And how you do business moving forward. Functions of those resources. Again, we're going to get into the supplier and distribution. And then here we're going to have to cross over into backup resources. This is one of the key critical components of having a disaster preparedness or resiliency plan. It's also referred to as a continuity plan. If something happens, we go back to our foundation and we then build up from there. And backup resources are absolutely key. One, I know when I owned a business, I didn't have. I had people who knew of backup resources, but it's becoming more and more critical that you have those at your fingertips and have them before you need them. We also look at critical business functions as those functions that are sensitive to downtime. Any legal or financial functions, anything that plays a role in your market share or reputation, image, those pieces. Like a website is an absolute critical business function for someone who is strictly online. And anything that is going to impact your cash flow. So if you have 7 products and 2 of them are your best sellers, and then all of a sudden you don't have the materials to make those 2 best sellers, that's a critical impact. So when looking at what it is you do, identify those particular business functions, and then drill down from there. And we can get into some of that. Again, you'll have this fillable PDF so that you can fill this in on your computer. I want to as well kind of pull us out of a survival mode. I know that's where we are right now, but in the near future, you're going to have to step in and out of that. You know, survival now was the fast and furious, making sure that you are in queue, you get your PPP money or EIDL money, or know that you have a reserve to last you until you can reopen. That has been the conversation. You know, and that will still continue to be the conversation once you get the money, and how do you move forward, or contacting your bank, you haven't gotten it yet. Those are pieces you're still going to have to kind of attend to. But stepping out of that is really now, how do I move forward? It's not survival anymore. My survival is next to me, but making it through, and what do I need to do to make it through and make sure I have a plan? And this is where some of the continuity comes in. This will be used as a foundation for your continuity. And from here, we can drill down even 5 more levels once it is set. But right now, we are just going to scratch the surface so we can make sure that the major pieces are taken care of. And over the next 4 weeks, we can kind of customize for some of whatever it is that you guys are needing to do inside your industry. So when this comes about, just think about and write this down. Take a moment to write down your goals, business goals, and what are you thinking about a sustainability plan? Just think about those 2. And given the scenario right now, where you came from is kind of where we're still sitting. Where we are going might be the same with a few changes, or it might be completely different. And we want to recognize that. Okay, next slide, please. Any questions? Okay, so this gets drilled down. So after the critical functions, now we can get into a supplier distribution. This is really for those who have retail, who are manufacturing, or have components that they need to provide with their service. So we really drill down here as to suppliers and what resource do they provide. We're getting down to, can I even get it from them? What threats are they seeing? Did they have a fire? Are they shut down? Did they have 19 employees with COVID and had to shut down their plant? Hence, while we're looking at a shortage of some pork and other meats, Smithfield was a huge processing plant for those types of meats, who was shut down in Pennsylvania, which is now, it was one of our main sources of how we got meat. That's gone. until they can reopen. So they're going through this as well on a different level in safety. But if you had them as a supplier, you now are scrambling to find another supplier. Having this in your portfolio, having this as a resiliency part of your sustainability and continuity plan, if anything were to happen again, you now have your resources for, here's my number one supplier, but if I can't get from them, then I can go to number 2 and number 3. So it's about really taking a deeper dive. And if you have some of that, that's great. Putting it all in one place will make it so much easier, moving forward. If you move forward, that's a whole nother conversation once we can get beyond finding funding, I should say. So this one, to me, really breaks it down and gets to the nuts and bolts, because we don't think about our suppliers sometimes and where they're getting their supplies or where they're getting their materials and what is happening. The ripple effect, I mean, we've felt it before in 9/11, we've felt it in 08. Some other disasters that have happened have impacted particular industries, but this is global. So right now, your number one supplier, number 2, 3, or 4 might be in the same spot, but moving forward, you now have the option, if number 1 gets slammed and they're not taking the little guy anymore, you now have the availability to really, pick and choose. Or maybe you have all 4 of them, who's going to give you the best price. So, it provides a absolute critical piece in part of the continuity and resiliency plan, because you just never know what's going to happen, and you're prepared at least for the next step. And this also will help if you need to pivot. Those who have, the Yeti, there's also a local manufacturer here who does toolkits for aerospace. And while aerospace is still going, there's a side of aerospace that is not. Now, you have your commercial and you have just your, your commercial, and then you have your military. So, and they had contracts for both. So half of their contracts dropped off, but they were able to fill their gaps with the machines they had in making something else that was needed. So, but had they not known their backup suppliers or known what they're capable of doing, if not their number one product, they would have been, behind the 8 ball or just stayed closed. So that is kind of what gives you a little bit of more comfort of, instead of reactionary mode or reactive, you can okay, what can I do? And what is next? And obviously for most of us or some of us, you couldn't do anything because you're non-essential. This is the time to really recreate or create a continuity plan so that maybe you can be, like I said, you can't do this, but you can pivot on a dime or in a relatively short amount of time to become or provide something that is essential. So looking at that. Next slide, please. So just in closing, before we get into, I know I kind of ran through this kind of quickly because I really wanted you to start thinking, and then leave enough for questions that I could give enough so you could start writing some things down. Again, you will get those fillable worksheets so that you can actually have it on your computer, leave it up for the day, go on, do what you need to do. But then if something comes into your mind, that critical function, because it's going to be hard for you just to sit down and go boom, 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 boom. Some you might be able to do. There's always one that you forget about. And then when you think about it, you write it down and you put it in right then and there. Now, if you can't drill down and it's too confusing, that's fine. I can absolutely help you with that. But identifying the critical business functions that could be impacted is really what I'm asking of you to do. And the assessment as well, right? And hazards of your suppliers and distributors. What are they going through? And it might take a phone call. You might not know, but getting information from them as to, you know, are they even in line? Do they know a time frame? Are they making them now? Or, you know, and most of you probably have already done this, but it's one of those things of staying connected. Really stay connected with your resources, your suppliers, and your distributors. If you didn't like your distributor or your supplier, now's a good time to go search for another one and be on board when things do come up. Always have a backup method for distribution. Even if you're delivering it yourself, right? You have to have something in place. And staying connected, as I said, to these resources, SBDC, your town, and know that your feedback is always is needed. There's no way we can understand everybody's industry drilled down. You know, with towns and government, SBDCs, and these resources coming together, we do have the expertise and we do have the collaboration to really make an impact as quick as possible. But we do need your feedback, your questions. And with that, I'm just going to open it up. And if anybody has any specific questions, that's fine. No question is a wrong question, because what you're asking someone else could benefit from.
Shelley, this is Stacy. What's the best way of going about finding out best practices in our industry other than Googling? So as a co-working meeting space, I'm pretty sure we're going to have to institute changes in terms of social distancing and putting up acrylic dividers between what was an open space. So 6:30 this morning, I was Googling all that information. And
that's a very good question.
Yeah, I know a few people who run co-working spaces, but in general,
yeah,
I don't want to recreate the wheel.
Right, and that's a good question. And I don't know if there is a specific place yet, because what we had as best practices are going to be changing. And I think that is where we can take what we used to do and what we know now and start that process of new best practices given COVID-19. Because those best practices are going to be around for a while. I would gather to say they're probably going to be around at least a year. Someone said at the beginning of this, and I would tend to agree with them, about 18 months. So, you know, as every industry implements or regulations come down as far as safety issues or needs to implement for safety reasons for employees or for consumers, those will be the new set of best practices. Some of that, once all of this is kind of behind us, and it'll still be in the forefront of people's minds, but some of those might ease back. But there's a whole new set of what we would consider best practices coming about. And it is unfortunate, but it also allows us to, you know, some a clean slate, some to start over, and you know, it's that weighing of it. So sorry I couldn't, and some of these questions I'm not going to have a specific answer for, but note that we are taking them down, and we will absolutely keep our pulse on what does come down from SBA and Washington and the health department and DOL and all of it. So
I have a question, Michelle.
Yes.
You really got me thinking when you talked about pivoting, because I had always thought of pivoting, but still in my own game. But now thinking about another game, so to speak, what would you consider a resource to find out how do I put this without, if we were to use our equipment for another purpose, for the greater good, how would we go about finding who needs our service?
So great question, because when you pivot, it's usually due to a circumstance. And this is, I referred back to startups. Startups have to pivot sometimes 10, 20 times before they really get to the product or the service that they want to promote. So pivoting is starting at the identifying, like you've identified this now. Now take that as I need to do some research. And all the while looking at what you already have going on, what resources can I tap into to make this a possibility? Again, you want to make sure that for the greater good, right? Who would need my equipment and how would that work? Do I rent it out? Is it for musicians? Would it be for, so it's that thought process again, right? Almost like a startup inside of your current business. In your scenario, that would be an absolute, pivot and almost a new service.
Yes.
So it's an expansion, but.
Well, you mentioned the company Yeti, who then switched over to face masks. So how did they get that connection? They didn't just say, I'm going to design it this way. They must have had the next step. Okay, so-and-so wants it. They want it this way. I'm going to design my equipment to produce it that way. How did they get to that other step?
Well, obviously there was a need.
Yes.
But they as a company had already identified areas in which they knew they could pivot. Okay, given the machines they had, given the materials that they already use, so they had kind of their pulse on suppliers and materials, and knowing that with a few alterations to what they're already doing, they could make these masks in abundance. They work with metal, they work with titanium, they work with plastics, they work with wire. So they had all the components and they knew that. Mm-hmm. It's about knowing what you have and how you can pivot or how you can maneuver inside your own industry. But there might be an overlap in another industry. There might be a band that wants to come from, Pennsylvania, but they don't want to haul their equipment. Put on a show for, at the green, at a park. I don't know. Those are the things you have to flush out.
Okay.
If I can make a suggestion, there is something that was promoted by the Greater Manchester Chamber called the Connecticut Supply Share. So it's basically just a shared, I think, Google or Excel document where people are putting in what they need, and you can look and see if you can meet that need, and you're putting in what you have to offer. And if you have ideas in your head, I would run it up the chain. So I work for Gary Anderson, the head of planning and economic development. So he's connected through all businesses in Manchester and also his colleagues throughout Connecticut who are connected to the governor's office, who's connected to other states. So if you do have an idea, it would be great to run it by him because other people might have run ideas by him, and then he can connect you.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yep. And really taking a dive into the industry. There's pages on Facebook, there's LinkedIn, you can sort by industry and just tap into that. No matter what service, product, or industry, that's where a lot of it resides. Thank you for your question. Anyone else? No other questions?
Yes, I have a question. My name is Troy Anthony, and I'm a local fashion designer here in Hartford, and I have a brick and mortar store. And I was doing prom dresses and wedding gowns, but I recently had to shift, like you talked about making, you know, mask and then making, you know, kind of like surgical gowns, which I kind of already had the materials, but you know, it's been a struggle being that there's, you know, not many employees or workers who will come out the house to come to work. So a lot of the work has been done by myself and a partner, you know, and it's hard to get materials right now because everything's closed. So my question was, you know, I've kind of been able to get materials, but now, you know, I've kind of donated a lot of stuff and there's like lack of funding out there. So, you know, any information about, you know, funding small businesses who are trying to stay afloat would be great.
So I don't want to go too far down this line, but did you apply for the EIDL loan and the PPP, Troy?
One loan I did try to get the, I think it was like a 10K advancement on the SBA sites.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only one that I've seen. But I've been hearing a lot of people say, you know, you have to apply at a state level, at a city level, and stuff. So any direction of guidance on that would be helpful.
Okay, so Stacy, can you flip to the next screen, please? So Troy, this is my information. And feel free to reach out to me. And I would also suggest going to what Stacy was saying, the supplier link, because you might be able to find someone in there that could help.
Okay.
With materials or another, you know, avenue for revenue stream. There's a young gal downtown Manchester doing the same thing you are, masks. She did.
Great.
Yeah, so I think, you know, even a collaboration, because I know she's a one gal show herself, her and her mom. So you guys are,
we're all feeling the pain.
Yeah, but you know, we appreciate it because that is one thing that's going to be necessity. And there's always going to be a shortage. So please feel free to reach out, and there are some other avenues of little small business funds through other businesses. Verizon had one. I know it expired yesterday. Facebook was doing one, but they also have their own criteria, which is okay, but reach out and I'll get that list to you.
Troy, this is Stacy from Workspace. I would love to get your contact information as well, because we're actually doing some things to promote artists and promote people who are creating masks through our gallery. So it's another take where we could find out what you're doing, help share your story, and at least let people know that you're out there contributing.
Yeah, totally. Like I was featured in the Hartford newspaper, you know, by just, you know, donating masks just to try to keep the people in the community.
Great.
You know, that I work, just giving them out, you know, because of the fact that try to reduce the spread.
Yeah, you're a hero behind the heroes. You know, you are just out there in the front line as well. So thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Michelle. This is Edwin Broad. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
I can. Hi, Edwin.
Hi. So I don't know if this is the proper forum for this or not, but I had a question regarding folks like myself being sole proprietors, and we have leases that are binding. And I'm wondering if there's been any thought given to maybe setting up some sort of advice for people like myself to help them renegotiate once we are able to open, because we're not simply going to have the volume of business that we once did that we relied on to take care of our overhead expenses. Any guidance on that?
Yes, so I do know. So I am one of, oh boy, I want to say 16 now advisors out in Connecticut. We just hired several new advisors, and Megan, who's on here, is our marketing gal, and Griselda is down the Bridgeport area. So we're all collaborating, but something came across my desk yesterday in regards to the sole proprietor, and information strictly for you on the PPP. There are things coming through based on sole proprietor and contract workers, because you guys are really kind of in a, I don't want to say you're left out, because you're not, but you're on a different business type, and things are being handled differently. So as far as negotiations, that one is so hard, because it really goes up the chain. If in fact your landlord or whoever you have a lease with has been able to get a deferment, they are, I have been told, I don't know how you can, hold them feet to their fire, but I've been told that then they have to do a deferment for their lease, that their tenants. And if maybe they only get, half, or maybe it's only for 2 months, negotiating at least something with their tenants was what I saw would have been the ethical thing to do. Can anybody make any business building owner do that? No. But it's the right thing to do. And if that's what they can or cannot do, at least an honest conversation between the two of you can at least come to some resolve, whether you break the lease and have to move out, or they're willing to work with you.
Can I jump in here on that? Just from, again, I'm from Kimberly Whitaker from Connecticut Main Street Center. This is a big topic of conversation on Main Streets right now, an enormous topic of conversation. And so far there isn't there's no black or white. It's all shades of gray, definitely. But everything that we're hearing across Connecticut is these are one-on-one conversations with your landlord. Landlords are not surprised by this conversation, but as if you're leasing, if you're a business owner and you're leasing space, you'll have to take the initiative to speak with the landlord. We know a lot of the landlords, property owners, certainly in downtowns, are expecting these conversations. They know that whether they admit it publicly or not today, they know that they're not going to be getting the rents that they're used to. They, of course, have loans that they're paying, so their relationship with their own bank is, they're going to be having the same conversation with their own banks too. So it's all about communication and approaching your landlord. And we've heard some creative ideas, certainly, about whether it's deferment or extending the lease by another year. That's being done in some cases, so that you're paying nothing at the moment, but then your lease will be extended by a year. So it's a dynamic situation that just really calls for open communication.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're heading towards the end. Again, the resource for the supply share list, I have a long bit.ly here, but if you Google the Connecticut supply share, I know that the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce has a resource list. Obviously, the Connecticut Small Business Development Center has one. The town of Manchester has one that's updated. So anything that comes across Shelley's desk will be shared with that list. And hopefully, as that COVID-19 resource list evolves in 18 months from now, it'll stay there as just a business sustainability and resilience list. Two things I wanted to mention is that this is a business resiliency workshop. We've got 3 more sessions, 3 more phases to go through. There's a personal resilience one that I'm leading. We had our first one this past Monday. There'll be 3 more the next 3 Mondays. If you're interested, let us know. Those are from at 2 o'clock, and it's more of a personal coaching approach. And the next topic, the first topic was personal values and how those can help us through it. And the next one, we're going to be exploring emotional intelligence. And then every week, Thursdays at 2 o'clock, Shelley does a current update. So those are around half an hour, 40 minutes. She'll give you any updates, what just came through SBA and other sources, and then just general Q&A. And you have her contact number if you need to reach her directly. Anything else, Shelley?
Yeah, just next week, same time, and it's taking what you have created from this week, and I will send those documents out to you via email when we get off here, so you can fill them in. We'll get into the planning kind of phase and stage, and some questions and things to really think about with that. But please feel free to reach out this week if you have questions on identifying and assessing, so that we can, really do some deep dives into the planning for you. Pass this along. It is recorded. So I look forward to working with each one of you, and have a great day.
Great, and the recording will be on the Town's Planning Department YouTube channel. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.